Good afternoon, guys. My name is Brandon, and today we've got a MIG welding project. Stick around. In some upcoming episodes, I've got to change out these tires, I got to change out these tires here, and I've also got to change out 2 tires on my Ninja 1000. So what I want to do, guys, I want to incorporate a stand that can hold one of those tires and hold it horizontally so that I can rotate it around as you remove the bead off the tire and the wheel, and I can use it for not only dirt bike tires but for street bike tires. And I want to incorporate it into this table so that there's a way, so it's basically a benchtop model, and I can clamp this system down to this table. So for you guys who have a standard fab table like this, because this has been made to a standard fab table size, dimension holes, this will just sit on the table and clamp down, and it's a nice secure stand to change tires. So I'm going to be using some, looks like maybe 3" by 3/16 tube. I'll verify that. We got some plate, some little round stock, and some scrap metal from one of the last projects we did. We did a bagger on a leaf blower. We rebuilt the frame. I'll put a link to that. And let's get going. I think I've got to cut this down a little bit in height. It's going to be a little too tall. This is roughly 36 inches on my adjustable pneumatic height table. So I'm going to probably cut maybe 6 inches off the overall height of this, just so it's a little more comfortable work height wise. Yes, I could lower the table down, but if I can, do one less step, just set this on the table and start working, that makes it even better. So let me cut this down to roughly 6 inches. I'll give you dimensions as we go. We're going to be using my Evolution chop saw to do this. It's a dry cut saw. If you want to know about links of any of the tools or any of the things that you see me doing, I'll have links down in the description below. So to confirm this, guys, this is 3" tube, and it's 3/16 of an inch thick. This little tool here is real handy when you go to the scrap yard, or even when you're trying to size up MIG wire. It's got a little MIG wire sizing guide on the end. This is great, like I say, if you go to the scrap yard or when you're setting up your machines, so you can confirm the material that you're working with. This is measuring out to be 15 1/4. We'll make it, let's go 10 inches. Now, whenever you cut with a dry cut saw, you're going to get a lot more blade life out of your tool if you cut the material on the bias. So you cut it on like a 45 degree like I have here. That's pretty close to 10. I'm good with that. These types of saws are really loud, so you want ear and eye protection at all times when you use it.
Now, when these blades get dull, you don't have to go out and buy a new blade. You can just Google online, and there are places that you can send the blade to and get them sharpened, and it'll be like new.
Look how clean that cut is. I mean, it's absolutely perfectly square and straight. Now what I'm going to do is just set this on here, and I'm going to use up this little piece of scrap. This will be actually on the top. That'll be up here. So that we can have a ledge to weld all the way around. I'll just bring it right to the edge of basically where that hole is there, and where the edge of like that hole is there. So, and then that will be the plate that I cut out of it. So we'll put this back onto the chop saw. Now we don't need this little shoe, so we pull that off, because this material we cut on edge like that.
Now, for you guys that have never used one of these dry cut chop saws, I'm telling you, these things are awesome. They just make life so much easier. It's just like using a wood chop saw, but you're cutting metal with it. They are loud, but the great benefit is that they don't shoot sparks. So if you're using it in a place where there's some flammable stuff, you don't really have to worry about that. They cut really good, and they don't generate any heat on the cut.
So now this plate will go on here. That'll get welded. We'll round the corners. And then this will get welded to that. Then the wheel will slide down onto this, and this will support it. But we need to cut this to length, because this rod doesn't need to be that long. So let me show you. We'll try to figure out a length here. Now this rod is going to end up going through where the axle would go through, so it's got to be at least that long. So it's going to go to that hub face, and it should stick out through the other side. So right where my thumb is, that'll work for the front. Right there. You can see how critical these measurements are, right? You're just doing it with your fingers. And the back's going to be a little bit deeper, so we'll go like just beyond the sprocket. So we're just sticking beyond the brake rotor on that side and just below the sprocket here. We'll call that the length. I don't even know what that is, but that'll work. Now I'll just put a little mark on that so I know the side I want to keep. And there it is. And now we gotta find a way to affix this to the table. So now we'll use some of this 1-inch tube. And I think what I'll do is I'll just cut off the pieces that were welded here, and we'll use it just as it is. We'll weld it here, and then we'll come out this direction with it. I think if we made this 18 inches, and this tube is 14 gauge.
I end up saving a lot of my scrap metal left over from projects, and it works out great when you're doing stuff like this because you can literally start building stuff after you've built up a little collection that don't cost you anything.
So this is kind of one of the great things about making things up in your head as you go along. So I was going to go this way and then this way with it, but then that kind of makes like a bigger footprint to put it away or to store it. So I think what I'm going to do is put another one, 18 inches, right on the other side. And literally, if you clamp it here and clamp it here, it can't tip that way and it can't tip this way. It's already going to be solid. So yeah, I think that's going to work perfect, and it'll store a lot easier too. Yeah, I like that. That's what we'll do. We'll make this one 18 inches also. Now we just got to do some joint prep. Now whenever you're MIG welding does not like to stick to like mill scale. Unlike a lot of stick welding, you can usually burn through that pretty good. If it's anything structural, which this really isn't structural, but I want to show you guys doing it the right way. So you know, you need to remove mill scale. So we'll remove the mill scale on this. We're going to put a little bit of a bevel all the way around the top of this so our weld metal has a place to go. And we're going to want to, because these are painted, these little 1-inch tubes, we're going to want to grind off in the areas where we're going to be welding. So we're going to grind here, and we're also going to grind a little bit onto that tube to get off the mill scale. Same thing on the other side. And we're going to want to like clean up our edges. Now I might either put plastic caps in this, or I might even weld on some solid pieces of metal. We'll see. We'll see how that goes. And then I'm going to bevel this little shaft here so that that can get welded on like that. And that'll kind of be like the basis of it. Now you're thinking, yeah, that's a pretty little base. Well, I did that for a reason. What I'm going to do is, I could have used a big piece of metal, but now you take a chance of scratching up your rim. So I'm going to take a piece of wood, 3/4 of an inch thick, and I think I got some leather laying around, and I'm going to put some leather over the top of the wood, so that way when the wheel is sitting down, there's no way it can get scratched. And to clean that up, I'm going to be using my grinder stand. Now, if you guys, for you new guys, check out this build. This is a truck wheel. That's all filled with sand. This is like 150 something pounds. So this is like super stable. It's a great base for any grinder. And you could make that even bigger, that plate, and you could do a couple grinders back to back. I've been considering doing that too. That might be something we do here in the near future.
Now, I had this grinder sitting on my bench for about 2 years with the intentions of building this grinder base, and I am so glad I built it, guys. I love it. I literally wouldn't change a thing, other than I would probably add a wider base to where the grinder bolts to, so I could actually put two grinders side by side. I'd like to have one grinder specifically so that I can grind metal, and then have a buffer beside it. Now here what I'm doing, I'm just grinding off those areas of mill scale. I generally would not do this, but I'm trying to show you guys doing it the right way. This isn't, like I said, this isn't a structural piece. I probably wouldn't spend the time and fill my shop with all this grinding dust if not necessary, but I'm trying to do it the right way.
All right guys, here's a tip on how to get rounded corners on a piece of plate and have it all look even. So take your Sharpie and just come in and do a little bit of coloring on the corners. Now get yourself a flat washer that has like the radius that you want. The smaller the washer, the faster the radius. The bigger the washer, the slower the curve. Now line your washer up on two sides like here and here. So have those bump. And now just take a scribe and trace it. And you see how that left a nice crisp line for me to follow? Right there. Now I just grind to that line. It's that easy.
The reason I do it this way as opposed to just say tracing the radius of the washer with the Sharpie is that as this part heats up, while it's on the grinder, you have a tendency to like lose the sharpness of that line.
And if you didn't want to take it directly to the grinder and have so much to grind, you could also get it close on the bandsaw. And I built this one not long ago for a portable bandsaw, and this thing works awesome. Now we got all our pieces prepped. Now it's time to start clamping everything together. So for the base to be even, we've got to be 6.5 inches on each side. There we go, that looks good. And I will just throw a clamp on this. And then double check that everything is down nice and flat. Snug that up. There we go, good. So now we got to set up our machine, and the easiest way to do that is go to the Miller Welds calculator. Just Google that online, and then go to what we're doing here is we are solid wire MIG welding. And then pick the material that you're working with. We're working with steel, and then you're going to pick your metal thickness. Now we are working with 3/16, but what we're going to do first is we'll weld this to this. So that's 14 gauge to 3/16. So if we just go 3/16, that's going to be too hot because that 3/16 means you're welding 3/16 to 3/16. So we're going to go 1/8. We're going to call that 1/8 inch because it splits the difference between 14 gauge and 3/16. And we're going to focus our heat into the 3" by 3" tube. And there we go. And we're using C25 gas. So argon C25 is between 18 and 19 volts. And so because our machine is like synergic, it sets up everything based on one parameter if you want to set it that way. We'll put our voltage around 19 volts, and that'll automatically calculate in the wire speed for the size wire we're using. And for this, I'm going to be using my Fronius Transsteel 2200. Snap it on. And while that's booting up, we will turn on the gas, and you want to stand off to the side and open it slowly, real slow. There you go. And C25, you want to open it all the way, and we will purge the gas off. While we're right there, we can check it. So we will hit the gas purge. You can hear that. You can see that's at 20 CFH or just a little over. That's good. Hit it again, that'll turn it off. If we forget to turn it off, it turns off in 30 seconds. And we're already at 20 volts right now. So watch what happens when, well, let me back up a little bit. So we're on steel wire. I've already set it for 30 thousandths. I've already set it for C25 gas. And now as I turn the voltage, remember it said 19 volts, it'll automatically turn. You could also do it by thickness too. That's set for right around 1/8 inch. We can go to 20 volts, and there we go. And that's just under, as you can see that thickness right there, that is just under 1/8 of an inch. So it's a little shy of 1/8. So that calculator was pretty close. If we wanted to do it this way, we could set it up for 1/8 of an inch, which is 125. So that's pretty close. It's 1.5 volts more. So let's try it this way and see how that works. Now, whenever you're welding, guys, you want good ventilation. You want to make sure that you're wearing a respirator. It's cheap insurance for your lungs. And, you know, just use some good equipment. These are just some cheap Harbor Freight gloves. They're made for TIG welding, but on low amperages like we're using here, or low voltages, that's fine. That'll work good for this, as long as your hands aren't super close to the work. I wouldn't wear these stick welding, but these are a decent glove, I find, for MIG welding. So just think about your health, guys, that's all.
I'm using a slight weave here as I do this, and I'm trying to keep the heat focused on the 3" square tube so we don't burn through the 14 gauge.
And that voltage was pretty good, guys. I probably could have gone maybe a little bit more. But I'm going to leave it. I like it.
And I'm just determining my voltages and what my settings need to be based on how it looks. It just needs to look like a good weld.
So I'm going to go up just a little bit because we're going to be welding that plate onto that 3/16 tube. So let's go right there. We'll try that.
One thing to think about, guys, when you're doing this type of welding, either with MIG or flux core, is that these types of welders are extremely fussy when it comes to where their grounds are. Now, you want to make sure you have a really good ground. Now, that could be for this welder, or that could be for a very inexpensive welder. But believe it or not, I know, as weird as it sounds, if some of your welds don't look good, make sure you got a good ground, because it matters. And be sure that your ground clamp is really close to your work.
All right, so now we've got to weld this to there. So I'll have to get a few tacks on it. We're gonna try to keep it as plumb as possible, but yeah, here we are.
Whenever you weld something, it's always going to pull on that side of the tack. So like right there, it pulled towards me. So I'm now going to go to the other side to pull it that way. If you can kind of plan out how you're putting your tacks, it helps make fabrication a lot easier.
Now, something you can do to keep weld spatter off your project, you don't need to go and buy any special spatter stuff. All you need is just some vegetable oil, cooking spray. Nothing fancy. You get it at the at your grocery store. Just spray it on. That'll keep stuff from sticking.
And you don't have to do anything special. You just spray it on, weld right over it, and then when it comes time to clean up, there's nothing special because it's just cooking spray.
So I'm already seeing a way to simplify things, guys. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a piece of angle here. So that way I only need one clamp on this side, one clamp on this side, and I think it's just going to make things easier. That way it's just clamping it better, I mean, versus having a clamp like that on top and then one here. That way the paint won't get all messed up. I can actually put a piece here, clamp it right on the very end, and the same thing there. I think that's going to work better, so let's do that. Then that way I don't have to plate these ends shut. Now for this, guys, I'm just using a piece of actually bed rail. Now this stuff is super hard, so I don't know how this is going to cut. Probably it won't cut great. Usually I cut bed rail with plasma cutter, but this is what I have and it'll work good for what we need.
Now bed frames or bed rails are an awesome material to use because people just throw them away all the time, but there are some issues with using them, and I'll have a video attached above that talks a lot about reusing bed frame metal. But yeah, it's usually pretty cheap. People give it away and throw it away. It's a good material to use if you use it the right way. And here I'm just kind of roughing everything up, grinding the edges, making it nice.
Alright, because we're welding 14 gauge now to 14 gauge, I've turned the welder down to 80 thousandths, which is equivalent to that. I've got my material all prepped, and now I'm just going to spray my table and my clamps and stuff with some vegetable oil. Doesn't have to be that brand, but just so I don't get spatter sticking everywhere. Makes cleanup a lot easier.
And you can use any type of cooking spray. It doesn't matter. You can use name brand if you want, or you can use the generic brand, which is what I use just because it's cheap, but it's all the same. So I say don't waste your money on getting a name brand one thinking that it's going to work a little bit better for you, because it doesn't. It works all the same. And you can see I just spray everything down. Spray my table. It keeps all those little BBs that you get when you're welding. It just prevents them all from sticking. And I've never had any issues with the weld not adhering or anything like that. And now I'm just going through and cleaning up my table, and I'm just using a flap wheel. It gets all the little pieces off the table that did stick if you didn't use spatter spray, and I'm just cleaning it up, and then I wipe it down, and it's all ready to be used for the next time around.
In the beginning I talked to you guys about how I was going to put like a piece of wood here and then put leather on it. I came up with another idea that I think is going to work a lot better, and it's a lot more cost effective. Check this out, guys. So this is all this is just a cutting board. You can get this at any big box store. It's a great material because it's pretty rigid and it's not going to mark up the wheels. So I think what I'm going to do is I'll drill a hole in the center and then make a round disc out of all of this, and then set it right on here, then the wheel will go on it. That should work great. But what we need to do is let's get this all painted up real quick. We'll get a coat of paint on that, set that aside and let it dry while we work on making this piece for that. And by the time we're done with this, we can try it out. All I'm doing here, guys, is just using a little bit of mineral spirits and just wiping the part all down. And what that's going to do is that's going to get all the grease and all the oils and all the spray that we used on it. And all you want to do is just wipe down your metal, and do this with any type of painting project that you have, and do this until you your rag is no longer black. When you wipe down the part and the rag is no longer black and dirty, then you know it's ready for paint. It's that simple. All right, now that I got it all cleaned down, I'm just gonna spray it down with some engine enamel. And what I like to do, especially with stuff like this, is use stuff that I have that's left over from projects. That way, you know, there's just a little bit. It feels like there's probably like that much in the bottom of this. And because this really doesn't matter that much, I think it'd be a good candidate to use this up. So yeah, that's how I get rid of my scraps, save a little bit of money. Now, I was wearing a mask earlier, guys, but I just wanted to talk to you for a minute now. If I had a little bit more time, I would have dropped this off at my local powder coaters. Now, in next week's episode, you're going to actually see I went to my local powder coaters. They powder coated the KTM frame. If you want to see that whole process, check it out. Be sure to tune in next week because it's pretty incredible, and it's a lot more affordable than I ever thought it was. I haven't brought my stuff to the powder coater just thinking that it was probably something that, you know, only high-end stuff you'd get. This is actually something I would bring to a powder coater if in fact I had enough time to do it, but I just don't. I got too many other things going on. I need to get this out. So for right now, we'll just dust on a coat of paint. But yeah, be sure to check out next week's episode because it's pretty cool. And now we'll just set this off to the side, let it finish drying, and we'll start on the other part of this project, which is making that piece. Alright guys, so let's move forward. So this was like 10 bucks. I think I just said, so it's like 16 and a half, so that's going to be like 8 and a quarter would be roughly center that way. And let's go this way, be like 12 and an eighth, so that'd be 6 and a 16th. So we'll do that right there. We'll make that center. I'm going to use a drill bit that is the size of the shaft, which is 1/2 inch, and we'll just pop a hole down through it. Well, that was easy. We're going to have to do a little something around here where this weld is, because this, it won't sit flat down against that, so we'll have to like chamfer out in behind on this cutting board. So that'll go down on like that, but we don't want it to wobble like that. We want it to sit down flat, so we'll have to just kind of like clear out, and I think probably the easiest way to do that is just probably use the grinder. You know what else would work too, guys? Like a Forstner bit. Let me try that. That would work good. So I'll just measure the width of the weld right here that we need to clear, and then we'll just size up a Forstner bit to fit it. How'd that be? There. That's good. So I mean, it's just a rough measurement. It's that. And now I'll just find a bit that's pretty close right there. I'd say that'll do it. 1 inch. It's pretty close. I think that'll work. Now, because we've already drilled a hole in this already, we can't just like stick this there because this would just wander all around. We could here because it would just bite in. The tip of that little bit would bite into the material, but because we don't have anything to bite into, it'd wander all around. So here's a little tip on how you can make this relief when there's already a hole drilled. So we're going to take a piece of scrap plywood. This is just a piece of 1/4 inch plywood, and I'm going to put a hole in it. There it is. Okay. Now I will take that piece of plywood and center it over my hole right here. See that? So now this right here will be a guide so that this doesn't skip off. So now just holding it all together, stick this in and just start drilling. And there we go. Now I'll just keep going a little bit at a time until I know I've cleared it. Let me just try that and see how it works. It's getting there. It's getting better. Go a little bit more. There, that looks pretty good right there, guys. And that sits down nice and flat on that. Perfect. Here's a quick way to make a circle, guys. It doesn't have to be overly complicated or accurate. Just take a piece of string. For here, I'm using a drill bit as a pivot, and I'm just lining it up to one of these holes in the table so I can slide the drill bit down through. So there that is, and then I just put like a little slip knot on the end of this rope and a pencil, and I'm just going to kind of take the string and eyeball it to roughly the edge of this, and then I'm just going to make a mark all the way around. Now I just got to cut it out. And for this, I'll do this on the bandsaw. It's a lot easier. Now I could do this with a jigsaw, but I'm just going to do it on the bandsaw. Just kind of like whittle away at it. I think it'll be a lot easier doing it this way since it's already set up. Now if you guys have a bandsaw and you want to make this into a portable bandsaw, check out the video. I think I've already talked about it, but I'll have a link up above for you to check it out. This comes off with just, it's so easy. This thing is the best tool probably I own right now. Now I'm just going to run a little bit of sandpaper over the edges just because it's got a little bit of like burrs on it, so we'll make it nice and smooth, that way nobody gets cut. Yeah, here it is, guys. So it's done. Check it out. So to store it, it kind of will store nice because it's kind of compact. It doesn't have these big legs coming out, and you can keep this off, or you can keep it on if you wanted, but to use it, you just throw that on there, and then take your wheel and slide it on over the shaft, and there you are. And you can literally spin it to work on it. Now this will be clamped down, so you could use some pressure and power if you needed to. This little plate on the back side, this PVC or this cutting board will keep your wheels from getting all scratched up and dinged up. This is going to work out great, guys. And that's all there is to it, guys. If you want to see how this tool is going to work, be sure to tune in to next week's episode. We're going to be taking the tires off the wheels, and I'm also going to be showing you from beginning to end how they powder coated the frame to the KTM 250 bike. So be sure to tune in next week and check it out. I want to thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for tuning in. New videos every Friday. If you're wondering what I'm working on before it makes it up to YouTube, you guys can catch me on Facebook and on Instagram. I'll have links down below. I'm always uploading to there. I'm always uploading to YouTube stories. Be sure to give a like, comment, and subscribe. Until next week, guys, I will see you then. Take care, stay safe, see ya. New episodes every Friday, so be sure to subscribe if you're not. Bye.